Ghost is one of the defining types in Pokemon. Gengar, Giratina, Dragapult, Mimikyu, all very popular, all very good in competitive play, in part because of the benefits their Ghost typing offers. But that wasn't always the case. In Pokemon's early generations, it seemed as if GameFreak had no idea how the Ghost type should work. In this video, we'll look at the weird design choices made by GameFreak that got in the way of Ghost-type Pokemon. We'll mostly be looking at this through the lens of Gengar, because it was the most competitively relevant Ghost Pokemon in the first 3 generations. In Generation 1, you had no other option, because the Gengar line were the only Ghost Pokemon. Ghost in Generation 1 was meant to be the original counter to Psychic types. Ghost was meant to be super effective against Psychic, but they screwed it up, with a programming error that actually makes Psychic types immune to Ghost attacks in red, blue, green, and yellow. That's not the issue though. Even if they had gotten this right, Gengar wasn't countering the best Psychic types. It wouldn't even try to, because the best Ghost type attacking move in Gen 1 was Lick, at a base 20 power. Meanwhile, Psychic, the move that every fully evolved Psychic Pokemon got access to, was base 90. But it doesn't stop there, and now we get to an issue that Gengar is still dealing with for some stupid reason. If Ghost was meant to be the counter to Psychic types, why did they make their only fully evolved Ghost Pokemon weak to Psychic types? Nothing about Gengar individually tells you that it should be a Poison type. Its Pokédex entries don't even do that. There's no mention of anything Poison related across all of its Dex entries. If anything, it tells you that Gengar's secondary typing should be Dark, which, yes, wasn't a thing in Generation 1, but there was still no reason to make Gengar a Poison type. And this wasn't an issue of Generation 1 needing another Poison type. It had plenty. Arbok, Weezing, the Nidos, Venusaur, and a handful of others. On the other hand, a few more Ghosts and some good Ghost moves would have been nice. All this type combination did was make Gengar weak to the one type Ghosts were supposed to have the upper hand against. Now you might be thinking that once Shadow Ball got introduced in Generation 2, Gengar could finally use its Ghost typing on offense. But you would be wrong, because Gengar couldn't make use of Shadow Ball. It could learn it, sure, but it had almost no reason to run it. Despite the only Ghost Pokemon in Generation 1 having drastically higher special attack than physical attack, Ghost was made a physical type. For what reason, I have no idea. Ghosts are literally the metaphysical. They exist on a wholly separate plane of existence. In battle, this meant that instead of throwing out Shadow Balls with its base 130 special attack, Gengar was only able to do so with its weak base 65 physical attack. Here's a typical Gengar moveset from around this time. 3 special attacks and a status move. There isn't a Poison move among them because, along with being a horrible offensive type, and despite the majority of Poison types having better special attack than physical attack, Poison was also made a physical type, which is a big issue for an offensive Pokemon like Gengar because Pokemon get a power boost when they use moves that share their typing. Poison only added weaknesses to Gengar. 2 Psychic types, along with Ground types, another popular offensive type due to the power of Earthquake. It's for this reason that Misdreavus actually found a niche in high-level Generation 2 play, because it lacked the Poison typing that gave Gengar pointless extra weaknesses. Misdreavus was the only Ghost Pokemon introduced in Generation 2, and it too had no reason to use Ghost attacks, because its physical attack is even lower than Gengar's, while its special attack is actually pretty decent. It makes no sense, making Ghost a physical type, but then making the first 2 fully evolved Ghost Pokemon special attackers. Even if you're anti-competitive, this was just awful game design. Why make your only 2 ghost Pokemon bad at using ghost-type attacks? In comparison, Psychic was a special type, and there were 13 fully evolved Psychic Pokemon by Generation 2, with only 3 of them having a base special attack lower than 90. And 2 of them don't really count. Wobbuffet can't learn any direct attacking moves, and Unknown can only learn 1, Hidden Power. Almost every Psychic type was good at using Psychic type attacks, because their stats were built to do so. Johto was the perfect place to correct the mistake of making Gengar a Poison type. In Generation 2, the Steel type and Dark type were introduced to combat Psychic types. Along with this, we saw Onix and Scyther change types upon evolution, with Onix dropping its Rock type when it evolved into Steelix, and Scyther dropping its Flying type when it evolved into Scizor. Just have Gengar turn into a Ghost Dark type upon evolution. This would give Gengar no weaknesses until the introduction of the Fairy type, and let it use one of its types on offense since Dark was a special type. Would this have made Gengar one of the best Pokemon in the game? Yeah, but that was already the case when it was lugging around the worthless Poison type. And it's not like Gengar would become some defensive monster if it had no weaknesses, because Gengar still has weak defensive stats. Pokemon like Raikou and Zapdos are going to be just fine against it. Another issue that befell Gengar had to do with its stats, specifically its speed. Gengar's base 110 speed is really good, but it's outclassed by 2 of its biggest threats, Starmie and Alakazam, both Psychic types. Even if they were hell-bent on making Gengar a Poison type, this wouldn't have been a significant problem if the Gen 1 games were programmed correctly so that Psychics were weak to Ghosts like they were supposed to be, Ghost was a special type, Ghost had a reasonably powerful move on par with Psychic from the very start, and Gengar was able to outspeed the best Psychic types not named Mewtwo. That's how you accomplish the goal of the one Ghost being able to check Psychic types like it was intended to. Psychic Pokemon still would have dominated everywhere else, because there was only one Ghost they'd have to look out for and make sure was gone. Let Gengar be a pure Ghost type, and you can probably get away with it being slower than Starmie and Alakazam, while still serving as a decent check to them. Instead, we had Gengar wishing it was a dual-type Ice-Electric so it could get the stab boost from the moves it used most often. The solution seems simple, right? Introduce a Ghost that has a high physical attack so it can take advantage of Ghost being a physical type. GameFreak considered that, but refused to go all the way with it in Generation 3. Banette and Shedinja were the first Ghost Pokemon whose physical attack was significantly higher than their special attack. Shedinja is a really cool Pokemon, but it's entirely a gimmick in competitive play. It only has 1 HP, and an ability that prevents it from being hit by any non-super effective attack. But Shedinja can also be damaged by entry hazards, status moves, and weather effects, meaning that if you're facing a Tyranitar, the sand damage will kill you in 1 turn. Banette, on the other hand, is actually pretty solid. It's a pure Ghost Pokemon with a great ability that prevents it from being put to sleep. Its base 115 physical attack is also very good, meaning it can fire off powerful Shadow Balls. The problem comes with its other stats. They are awkward, to put it nicely. It has a base 83 special attack that it will never use because its physical attack is so much better. Then it has bad defenses and low speed. That's not a combination built to succeed. Gengar also has bad defenses, but it's got the speed to make up for it. Its high speed actually lets defensive Gengar sets be viable, as it can pick which threats it specifically wants to outspeed, then have EVs left over to invest in its defenses. Banette neither has the speed to hit hard first, nor the defenses to consistently survive more than one attack. All they had to do was give it Gengar's stats, but swap the attacking stats. That's it. A fast Banette could have been a really tricky threat in Generation 3, in a similar way to Gengar. If they wanted Banette to be a slower ghost, they could have just made it Diet Snorlax, with say 100 HP, 95 physical defense, and 85 special defense to go along with its 115 physical attack. The moveset of Will-O-Wisp, Pain Split, Shadow Ball, and Hidden Power Fighting could have been very effective if Banette was also able to outspeed or survive multiple hits from key threats like Zapdos and Starmie. It's honestly weird how GameFreak never committed to making a great ghost Pokemon that could make use of its ghost type attacks at the highest levels of play. Every other type had at least one Pokemon that could do that. So why did Gengar excel in these early years? Well, its base 130 special attack and 110 speed were still really good, and Gengar had a lot of other attacks to choose from, like Thunderbolt, Ice Punch, and Fire Punch. It also got access to good status moves like Will-O-Wisp, Hypnosis, Taunt, and being the fastest Pokemon that could use Destiny Bond. A move pool this wide and varied was a rarity back then, so Gengar could have easily ended up being much lower on the competitive totem pole if its move pool primarily consisted of Ghost and Poison attacks. Ghost being immune to normal type attacks also helped it greatly, as some of the most powerful Pokemon in the early days of competitive were normal types. If it wasn't for the physical special split in Generation 4, we would have had to wait until Aegislash came along in Generation 6 for there to be a high-level physical ghost that used strong ghost attacks. But the physical special split has mostly hurt physical ghost Pokemon because they lost access to Shadow Ball, which became a special attack, and weren't given an equally good physical attack that most ghosts could learn. The best physical ghost Pokemon nowadays aren't using powerful ghost moves that are widely available. Marshadow, Houndstone, and Annihilape all use signature ghost moves, while Dragapult is one of the few Pokemon that's ever made significant use of Phantom Force. The other notable physical ghost, Ceruledge, uses a weaker ghost move in Shadow Sneak to cover for its average speed, while using the fire type Bitter Blade as its heavy attack. The ghost type is a flawed type, because I think Game Freaks always struggled with what they want the type to be. It seems like they want ghosts to primarily be tricksters with status moves and the like, but many early ghost Pokemon lacked the defenses to do so effectively. I almost feel like this type is in the wrong game series, because for that bend of fighter to reach its full potential, you'd want some universal defensive options to go along with your limited number of attacks. Like if this were a fighting game, ghost Pokemon would be the set play trap characters, or the puppet masters. Just look at Guilty Gear and what's possible with fighters like Testament and Baiken. They fundamentally alter how their opponent plays the game because of their abilities to set traps in different ways. Testament can set pop-up trees and trapping webs across the stage, while Baiken makes it very dangerous to apply standard offensive pressure because she can counterattack while she's blocking and use her card mechanic to cut you off from various gameplay elements. In fighting games, you also have a lot more defensive options, like different ways to block and the ability to use movement as a defensive tool. Pokemon battles don't really allow for that because movement is limited to switching in or out of battle, with the rare exception of playing doubles with a Pokemon that has Ally Switch as one of its moves. The universal mechanics of Pokemon battles don't give Ghost Pokemon the chance to manipulate the board through non-attacking moves as much as I think Game Freak believes they can. Pokemon doesn't allow for the sort of complex trickery that can spring powerful traps and chain reactions consistently. The Ghost type feels like Pokemon's oddity, never fully understood by its creators. Despite that, Ghosts have been a key part of competitive Pokemon from the very beginning. Gengar, Giratina, Jellicent, Aegislash have all seen great success in both singles and doubles, and that's just to name a few. It's a type that's brought us some of the coolest designs in the franchise, many of which are people's favorites. Who's your favorite Ghost Pokemon? Gengar's the obvious answer for me, so I'll spotlight some different Pokemon. I think Cofagrigus and Dusclops are two of the best looking Pokemon. They both really nail what it means to be a ghost, and are fun to use competitively too. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out some of my other content. On the left is my most recent video. Hitting the button in the middle will have you subscribe to the channel, and the playlist on the right contains all of my other Pokemon videos. You can also follow me on Twitter at GoLower. Thanks for watching, peace.